The waiting hall was filled with tension. 33 candidates lined up in their crisp suits and polished shoes. Each one carried a leather folder. Each one sat upright rehearsing their answers, glancing at the others with silent competition in their eyes. The air smelled faintly of cologne and ambition. Then the door creaked open, and a young woman stepped in. Her dress was plain but carefully pressed, and in her hands she clutched a simple folder that looked as if it had been used many times before. But what caught everyone's attention first were her shoes, torn at the sides, the soles almost worn thin. Whispers started instantly, like sparks in dry grass. A man in the corner smirked and nudged his neighbor. Did she mistake this for a shelter line? He muttered. A few chuckled, their laughter quick but sharp. Another woman rolled her eyes and shook her head. The young woman heard them, every word, but she didn't let her shoulders sink. She lifted her chin higher, forced a small smile, and walked with steady steps to an empty chair. Her eyes betrayed no shame, only quiet determination. She had come too far to let ridicule break her. The receptionist at the front desk scanned her briefly, lips tightening in visible disapproval, and then turned her attention back to the clock. The atmosphere thickened again as the door on the other side opened. The CEO entered, tall, well-dressed, his expression unreadable. He carried the kind of presence that silenced a room without words. His gaze swept over the candidates, pausing for the briefest moment on her shoes, then lifting slowly to her face. No comment, no smile. Just a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe. Then he moved forward, signaling the interviews to begin. The interviews began one by one, and the candidates marched forward like soldiers in parade, each armed with perfect resumes, shining shoes, and voices rehearsed until they almost sounded mechanical. The first candidate, a tall man with a confident smile, spoke about his double degrees, the multinational companies he had worked for, and the strategies he had mastered. He leaned back in his chair as if victory were already his. The CEO nodded but said nothing, only scribbling something on his notepad. The second, a woman in an expensive navy suit, delivered her answers like polished bullets, fast, sharp, and practiced. She spoke of leadership, innovation, and vision. Others followed, each one eager to outshine the rest, each one speaking of achievements and titles as though the job were a trophy waiting to be handed out. Applause was unnecessary, the smug looks on their faces were applause enough. Then her name was called. The young woman with the torn shoes rose slowly and walked to the chair. For a moment, the room fell into a hush, curiosity mixing with a trace of scorn. She sat upright, folded her hands on her lap, and waited for the CEO's question. His voice was deep but calm. Why should we choose you? She inhaled quietly before answering. I don't have the finest clothes. I don't have a perfect list of achievements. But what I do have is the willingness to work harder than anyone else. I know what it means to start with nothing, to fight for every opportunity, and to never give up even when people laugh at you. Her voice did not shake. Her eyes held steady. The room went silent. Even the ones who mocked her earlier found themselves shifting uncomfortably in their seats. For the first time that day, the CEO's pen stopped moving. The interviews ended, and the candidates sat stiffly in their chairs, pretending to be confident while their eyes betrayed the hunger to know who would be chosen. The CEO gathered his notes, his expression still unreadable, and excused himself for a moment. Whispers filled the room the second the door closed. It has to be one of us, one candidate murmured smugly. She doesn't stand a chance, another added, glancing toward the young woman with the torn shoes. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed straight ahead as though she could not hear them. In his office, the CEO leaned back in his chair. His little daughter, no more than 8, sat on the sofa sketching in a notebook. She looked up when he entered. Daddy, are you finished? She asked brightly. He nodded and handed her the sheet of names. Who do you think should work with us? He asked playfully. She scanned the photos, her eyes stopping on the face of the girl with the worn shoes. Her, she said softly. She looks like someone who understands. Can she stay forever? The CEO's stern mask cracked into the faintest smile. He returned to the hall, his footsteps commanding silence. Everyone straightened, ready for the verdict. He paused in front of the group, lifted one sheet from the folder, and then looked directly at the girl who had been mocked. Reaching out, He took her hand and said clearly, out of 33 candidates, she is the one. A stunned silence swept through the room. The smirks vanished, replaced by shame. She rose slowly, her torn shoes carrying her with pride as the CEO guided her forward. What others had seen as weakness, he had recognized as strength. And in that moment, her life changed forever.